I am so glad that Skinny Puppy seem to have committed themselves to putting out regular albums nowadays. For probably about the last 10 years or so, they have been one of my favorite bands. Now, I've always liked Skinny Puppy, but they've only ever been one of my favorite bands for the last 10-15 years. For about 30 years, they have been one of the greater industrial bands in the world, but as of the last 10-15 years, they have been especially good, at least in my opinion. And they are one of the few bands who, whenever they do put out an album, it tends to be one of the better albums to come out that year. They have a much more accessible sound now than they did in the 80s or 90s, but I find that they have made their sound more accessible without making it bland. There have been lots of people who have been hostile to the more, I would say, kind of electro-pop direction that Skinny Puppy has gone in. And given that, in my opinion, the music is just as good as it's ever been, if not better, I don't really understand this hostility. I just suspect that there are some people who, when they first found Skinny Puppy, found something that they liked that a lot of other people didn't, so they felt like they were in this really exclusive club. And given that I like old Skinny Puppy, when I listen to that stuff, I do feel special for being one of the few people who can appreciate it. But that being said, I like the new stuff too. What I like about Skinny Puppy's newer stuff is that they have shown that they are competent at the basics of songwriting. A lot of old Skinny Puppy and a lot of industrial in general tends to have these massive walls of electronics. And sometimes it's hard to find an actual song buried under all of the effects. But with the newer Skinny Puppy stuff, it seems to me like the songs are so good that even if you were to hear them played acoustically, they would be just as enjoyable. And that is especially true of Weapon. The song structures on Weapon are a lot more simple than they have been on other Skinny Puppy albums. Songs like the opening track, Warnin', are a perfect example of this. Very simple, not a whole lot of layers, but still a very good song. And not only are the songs in this album more simple, they also seem to be using a lot of older, old-fashioned sounding synthesizers and drum samples. Maybe that's in response to some of the criticism that they've gotten about how they've changed their sound. Warnin', Pseudonama, and Globel are especially 80s sounding. And they've re-recorded the song Solvent originally from their album Remission. And in that song they've reused some of the really classic sounding Skinny Puppy drum samples. But I think my favorite track in the album is probably Paragon. It's sort of upbeat, sort of rock-ish, and I like it when Skinny Puppy goes in that direction. Since Skinny Puppy has put out what I consider to be a string of very good albums, I keep worrying that the next Skinny Puppy album is going to be crap. I keep worrying that because they've had so much good material, they're going to run out of ideas. But so far, every album they've put out, in my opinion, ever, has been fantastic.